this right here, which is the ADD or Adventure Driven Design winch plate, designed for the Montero. Gen 1 to 2.5, I believe. I think there might be some slight trimming you have to do on a 1. I could be wrong, I'll look into that. But on a Gen 2 and Gen 2.5, this mounts right up. Well, welds right up. You've got 2 holes right here that are alignment holes that coincide with 2 holes on the lower part of the frame right here and over here. And that helps with lining this up with the frame so that, for one, everything gets straight and true, but also if you were to get a ADD skid plate, there's the whole, this whole area here for the fair lead, and you want to make sure that those would line up. So that's why you want to make sure that you line this up right so that they would line up together if you were to have that, which eventually I plan on having that skid plate, but for now I'm just going to go with the factory one and trim where it needs to be so that you can have this opening for your fair lead. But yeah, it'll just go about like so. Obviously it'll get lined up, but it'll be right in that area right there, which is the perfect spot because this is the factory mounting place for the factory winch, which in other countries came with. Okay, so here's everything. Your winch, your mounting bolts for the winch, your hook, your ground cable, your controls, and your fair lead. I already mounted the fair lead because I had done some stuff before, so I'm not going to show you that, though I'd recommend bolts this side on the back side, nuts to the front, just for clearance of the winch because it's kind of close in there. But yeah, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and instructions, which we will get into. Synthetic line, again, that's the one I got. And on the back, you've got your positive. This will run to the battery. And then we'll talk about where the negative goes for going to the ground. Yeah, pretty straightforward. There's your unlock for your winch, so it'll come out, and then it's locked in, obviously. That's that. And once we install everything, we'll also do the proper way of spooling up your cable. So what we're going to do now is we're going to figure out how to take off the solenoid pack because it runs into the cooler, the transmission cooler on the Montero. And I think if we have this out of the way, we shouldn't run into that problem. So let's do that now. All right, so these guys here, there's 2, one in the front and one in the rear. You're gonna be taking those out, and they're a 6mm Allen. So once you have those out, this is gonna come up, and yes, this is apart kind of for the moment, but that's okay. Just don't like pull on it or anything. And then kind of shimmy back past. So there's these kind of on the other side, but they're sort of, they wouldn't come out for me on mine. So what I just did is took them off on one side, pulled this up, and then pushed the other way, and then this comes totally up. And this is, again, what we're going to be removing this. I'm probably not going to be using this, at least that's my kind of recommendation. We'll be putting this back together just like this. Like that. Just make sure they're fairly tight. Like so. Make sure the other side's tight. Because this part here isn't doing anything for the rigidity of the winch itself. That's obviously these guys. So that isn't necessary. It's flimsy metal, so it's not really an important piece. So then what we have is some more Allens, 3, underneath that piece there, and those are 4.5 millimeter Allens. Now my only dilemma is I don't have a metric Allen set. You would think I would, but I don't. Well, at least not at home. And I wasn't smart and didn't bring some of my tools from work. So there are, most of the time, almost every time, a Torx that will correlate as well, which in my case happens to be a T25 Torx. So we are going to use a T25 Torx. But if you want the real one, it's a 4.5 millimeter. So and there that is. That comes off of there, and there's your solenoid pack. So originally, your solenoid pack comes in this. It's big and bulky, and kind of hard to decide where you'd want to mount all that. So instead, we're mounting this. I removed it completely from that encasing, and we're just dealing with the solenoid pack itself. This is what we're going to find a place to put. Another thing, this is where your remote hooks into. I'm probably gonna I am going to lengthen these and find a decent place to put this. Mount it somewhere under the engine bay, somewhere nice and tidy, that's easily accessible. And then this, we're gonna mount probably on its side, maybe like this or something. But you don't want it, I don't know if I'd want it like this, because if water was to set on top of here, it's just gonna sit there. If you have it on the side, at least it's running down in a way. I mean, I'm gonna have these obviously all sealed up and everything, so that's not as much of an issue, but still, just to be safe, I'd rather have it like that. But again, this compared to this, it's kind of hard to tell, but this is a lot bulkier, obviously. So we're gonna find somewhere to put that. Now, before you do mount this in the vehicle, you're gonna want to put these guys in to the spots for the nuts. So in these 4 places, because that's what your main bolts that hold it in are gonna go to, are these guys. And they're not fun to try and do when it's already in place. So you'll just slide these guys in their little spots, and they do move around a little bit, but you'll be able to kind of wiggle the bolts around till they thread in. Like, you'll just kind of like go in here and you'll be able to wiggle them around enough to get them to thread. But yeah, you don't want to do that after. You want to do that first and then get them into the vehicle. So the reason we did all the solenoid box removal was because of our transmission cooler right here and how much room that leaves us for the winch itself. Now, this is gonna work because I measured already, and from this point to this point is 7 5/8 high, and the tallest point on the winch without the solenoid box and stuff on top of there is 6 3/8. So that leaves us enough room, like what, almost an inch, maybe, probably a little less than that. Anyway, my measuring is amazing, right? But yeah, so we now know already. I mean, I could have probably measured all that stuff beforehand, but I didn't. But we know it's gonna fit. And all we have to do is figure out how we're going to mount the solenoid box. You'll have to remove the cooler to get it in there. And then once you have, obviously reinstall. So that's just these 2 10 mils on these clamps. Undo those and undo your hoses. Take this out. Then we'll get the winch in there. Just be mindful of fluid, because obviously trans fluid. So have something to catch that fluid if you can, or some drop cloths, something like that. So I'm gonna remove this out of the way, and then we'll get to actually getting the winch in there. Okay, now that our cooler is out of the way, we have plenty of room, and we can just slide this guy in here. Again, make sure your nuts are in the bottom of those slots so that you're good to go. It's hard to see in this shot because it's underneath here, but one other thing I wanted you to be aware of before you mount this in is to route or mount your ground wire that will be going to the battery, because it mounts on the lug on the bottom of the winch. Mount that before you put it in here. So I want to stress that. I forgot to say it earlier when I was doing the whole thing. So make sure you put that on the bottom there before you put this in, because it's a lot harder to get to once it's in here. So do that. Just place her in there like that. Much easier. I was trying to do it with the cooler in place, and you just can't do it. There's no room. Now take your bolts. They have lock washer and washers on them, and sneak them around. Fish them, fishy, fishy. There we go. Just obviously want to get it close enough to where you can get them in, and then obviously just go finger tight for now while you're getting them all in there. There we go. Sometimes they move a little bit, so just make sure they didn't like move out. And then just once they are all in, zap them down, tighten them down real good. If you want a torque spec, I will put that up now. Alright, did I lose my back one? Oh, I did. So, sometimes they fall out. There you go. There is some room, obviously. So you might have to kind of fish around. And this is why you want to do it beforehand. It's a little tight and a little hard. I was able to get it there though. But yeah, I'll put the torque spec up, what you should torque them to, or if there is one, that is. If there's not, you're not going to see one now. But just, you want them tight, obviously. Once that's done, I'm going to reinstall the cooler, and then we'll figure out where to put this guy. So part of the joy of coming along on this project with me, you get to see where I thought things were going to work, but apparently they don't, so I had to figure out another way of doing it. Originally when we measured, I measured and this was going to clear, it was going to be no problems, it's going to go in, then I can put it in. Then I realized I have to take this all the way out to get it in the first place, so got it in, and I was like, okay, cool, now I'm going to mount up the cooler. No, because where the cooler sits, it sits about here, and that ran into this guy over here. Our nice little disengaging lever for the clutch inside, or the gear or whatever. So that ran into it. So I still had to move this over in order to make it work. Not a lot, probably about an inch, 2 inches, I think. No, 2 inches, I think. So I just went over 2 inches. I have some kind of finagly, not the greatest brackets in the world, but since I'm doing this at home, I don't have a lot to work with sometimes, so it makes it a little difficult. But I've got some other brackets that I've sort of made. I'm also not exactly a great fabber, so bear with me with that. I know some of you probably cringe at what I'm doing, but you know what? I have to do with what I have. So that's the way it is now. Eventually down the road, yes, I'd like to put a better bracket on and stuff like that. But to make this so that it's sturdy, I mean, it's pretty sturdy already, but I would want to have more than one mounting spot for the cooler so I don't run into problems. Also thinking about possibly making something that might go under here to shield this because if this cooler were ever to leak, I mean, I hope it never does, but if it were, all that would be getting on this, and that would not be ideal. So I was thinking about it. I think I might want to make something to shield this so that if anything was to leak, if I made it to where it would go towards the back and leak off the back and not actually come in contact with the winch would be great. So I'm going to look into possibly doing something like that too. This is the way I'm doing it. Who knows? I might change things down the road. I'm still possibly thinking of getting rid of this cooler and running a different cooler, and then I would probably put that in a different position to where it won't be right up in here, so that way I can I'll have more room in here to begin with, and so that's a possibility. Another thing to think of too, if you have a body lift. If you don't have a body lift, you might want to get one. And if you have a body lift, all this stuff is 10 times easier, apparently. From everybody I've talked to, when you have a body lift, this takes care of a lot of things because all this is up higher, so you don't run into things interfering as much. So, with that being said, if you don't have a body lift, maybe buy one. I know Adventure Driven Design sells them. Yeah, and then that would get you a little bit more lift you need. Then you can go bigger tires, do all that cool stuff. So, I might have a body lift in my future too. We'll see. But for now, this is basically the process I'm doing to make all this stuff work. There are probably different processes you could do. There's different ways you could do things. You gotta kind of figure it out yourself, or take it to a professional that knows really what they're doing, and they can maybe figure it out for you. So anyway, move that over a bit. I can now access this. It rotates its full amount like it's supposed to. Doesn't run into anything. I will come up with those other two brackets, and then I'm going to remotely install the solenoid pack. So a lot of the process of welding up the plate and stuff, I didn't exactly get a lot of footage of because just didn't want to be like getting in the way of the guy when he was trying to do his work. So I will show you best I can what he did, as well as just the work when it was done, because this is bare metal. I painted it once it was done, just so that, you know, keep it from corrosion and that kind of stuff. And also I didn't get the whole wiring part of the solenoid pack because it was just, I was struggling a lot. Well, not struggling a lot, but I was trying to figure out where to go, what to do, lengthening of wires, all that stuff, and it was just really slowing me down, having to constantly start and stop the video all the time, especially when it was just, I was kind of learning as I was doing it, since this is the first time I've ever done a winch install, especially on something that didn't have a body lift or anything like that to make it easier. So I will show you what I did. I will show you where I put the solenoid pack, how I routed the wires, just to give you an idea, because this is just kind of like some of the experience that I had with this, and it could be different with different people, with whatever they use. Like if you didn't go with this winch, maybe you went with a different winch, things might be slightly different. So the main points work for probably everybody, but a lot of it would be, you know, personal experience plus your skill. You might have a better idea of how to do things differently. You might find a better way than I did. I'm just kind of showing you what I did, the products I used, and yeah, just kind of my experience with the whole thing. You can take what you want from that. Obviously, I'm not responsible for thinking you screw up, but yeah, I just, you know, given what my experience was with this, and then let you go from there. This winch plate is super nice. It's like designed for this perfectly. It's set up really nicely, welded in there perfectly and everything else, and it's just really nice. The biggest problems I ran into was just with this cooler and everything, just made things a lot more difficult as far as the installation of the winch itself. And the only real way around that is either with relocating your cooler, sticking it over slightly, or a body lift. I've seen a couple guys with body lifts and they have so much more space. I think you wouldn't have to run into a lot of the things I did. So if you did go that route, this will be a lot easier. But yeah, so that's just kind of what I wanted to say. Like, you know, I didn't get everything I would have liked to as far as in the video. As far as like, you know, showing them welding everything and all that kind of stuff, I got a little bit. I tried to put that at the beginning of the video there. But mostly just like, you know, showing some of the process of what I did, how I put things in certain places, and that's that. So I'll show you where I put the Winch solenoid pack and everything now. Okay, so here's the pack right here. It's on the back side of the front piece of the body, right here below where the grill goes. All main wires are pointing down so that I could route them pretty easily down to the winch itself. This right here is the plug for your remote, which this is going to be mounted to the grill itself. I've made a little bracket that comes off the back, and so this will just be right in the front here, which will be nice and easy to just plug straight into, so it's nice and quick for access, and obviously it'll be okay from the elements and everything for this little plug or cover. So yeah, that's just hanging loose right here now just because I have the grill off. I want to be able to show everything. So yeah, it's pretty easy. I just drilled 2 holes through the front and then put some paint in them to keep them from, you know, corrosion, all that kind of stuff. Mounted bolts and nuts to hold this in place, and then used new wires. I think it was either 2 or 4 gauge. I can't remember which exactly, but and redid the connection points on the other side down to the winch, and then routed my positive up. Okay, to give you an idea, those are the bolts in the front for the solenoid pack, and wiring is right here. You can see some of my wiring. Some of the cables are right here, routed, so they come from up and on the solenoid pack, around, and then back to the winch itself. And I kind of made them a little long just so that they had, I didn't want to kink or do anything like that, and wanted them to be away from stuff decently enough to where they're not rubbing too much or anything. Obviously cover them all with good corrugated tubing and everything. But yeah, so then they go to the back side and hook up to the winch. And then this is my positive wire here, and that I routed through my side hole right there, and then it came up through here, goes up along the top here, along the radiator, which I also wrapped all of this in electrical tape just to give a little extra, you know, shielding. And then it comes around to this switch right here, and that's my disconnect for the winch, because you want to have a good disconnect for the winch, something that's nice and strong. This one's by Blue Sea, and it's a 300 continuous amp and 500 amp for 5 minutes, 900 amps of 30 seconds. So yeah, pretty awesome. I was recommended this by another buddy who knows a lot about this kind of stuff. So yeah, nice turn off, just switch on, ready to go, switch off, don't have to worry about it. Makes it nice and easy. It's right next to the battery. If I ever had a problem, if something happened, I can come up here real quick and turn her off. And I used a little self-made bracket to go up and on so that this would be in place, because this, since obviously Montero, you don't have a lot of space under the hood. So yeah, kind of had to do with what I had. So yeah, that wire goes in one side, and the wire comes out the other side, goes to the positive. Now, don't look at my battery stuff. That's not exactly the greatest looking cleanness, but it works. I gotta clean things up a little bit better. But yeah, that's basically the gist of it. Positive to here. My negative comes from this side, came around to the back. So I think if you look, it's really hard to tell, and there's a lot of junk in here, sadly. My negative comes down off the bottom, and I had it to where it was pointing in the direction to where I had it coming this way. But it comes along the bottom, comes up here, along this, comes out under here, and then obviously goes over to the battery here. So that's that. One other thing to note when you're doing the winch is if you're keeping the stock skid plate, you are going to have to trim out a section to clear the winch pipe. And what I did, it was about 2 inches from here to here. And then I don't know exactly how much that would. But it's pretty simple once you get that. Like I just cut down and then cut across. And I have to clean this up a little bit and then repaint it. But yeah, so just be aware, and it's not super difficult really. There is a supporting metal piece behind here. So, and it's welded at a couple spots. So just make sure you cut those welds off so that that other supporting piece is gone. But once that's off, this will then mount up perfectly normally. Now, if you're going with a adventure-driven design skid plate, or if you design your own, whatever you do, obviously don't worry about that. But if you are keeping with this, trim. And yeah, then you're ready to go. All right, and that's the end of this video. Do be sure that before you do any winching with this, to re-spool your line, because you want to make sure it has the right amount of tension on the drum, as well as just being nice and even back and forth along there. I will put a link over here for doing that, because there's plenty of other people who have made great videos on doing that. So yeah, check that out. Make sure you do that first before you do any winching. And yeah, if you have any other questions, comments, things to say, make sure to put them down below. And if you are not subscribed, I'd appreciate it if you did. I'm trying to bring out more as much as I can. I'm pretty new to this whole thing, so I'm still trying to get the kinks out and stuff. But I appreciate you looking and checking this video out, and I'm hoping to have more of my adventures and things to come on here as well. So yeah, again, thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time. Okay, so one last thing. I talked to Adventure Driven Design about this video and gave them a look at it before publishing, because I just wanted to have some input and thoughts on the whole process here and everything. And they were appreciative of that and really liked what I had done. And so as a thank you and a little extra bonus, they gave me a discount code that anybody can use on any order for a little bit more off of anything you buy from them throughout the whole year of 2021. So use code DAHLEN, so my last name, DAHLEN, and that'll get you a little savings. So thank you, Adventure Driven Design. And with that, it's a wrap. Thank you, everybody.